Hello. Welcome to a Lenten Pause, a series of devotions that I am doing in this Lenten season on the Psalms. I'm Reverend Jane Rowe. I'm pastor at South Church in New Britain, Connecticut. Today, we're going to read some verses from Psalm 118. It's a fairly lengthy psalm, so we're not going to read the whole thing. But I do encourage you to read it on your own. There are a lot of quotables in this psalm. I read that it is the most quoted psalm in the Bible. In other words, in the New Testament particularly looks back to this psalm and draws on it in a number of places. So there'll be verses that are familiar to you if you are a churchgoer or a Bible reader. But I want to read the first few verses as we begin to reflect on this. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for God is good. God's steadfast love endures forever. Let Israel say, God's steadfast love endures forever. Let the house of Aaron say, God's steadfast love endures forever. Let those who fear the Lord say, God's steadfast love endures forever. Now, if you're just reading this psalm, you might feel a little annoyed by the repetition, a little bored by the repetition, sort of like, let's get on with it, okay? We got it. But the psalm, which of course is a song, it's a hymn sung by God's people, is insistent upon repeating this phrase, God's steadfast love endures forever, and calls upon different voices to echo that, to repeat that, to claim that. It's so important. The words we repeat to ourselves. I think oftentimes we repeat to ourselves words that are negative, words that drag us down. I'm no good. I'm not good at that. People don't like me. I can't do it. We repeat words to ourselves that reinforce negative feelings. And I think this psalm, as it opens, is encouraging us to repeat words of affirmation, words of gratitude, words of faith. What we repeat to ourselves imprints itself on our hearts. It forms us, it changes us. And this particular phrase, I want us to just pay a little bit more attention to this phrase, God's steadfast love endures forever. I was thinking about each of the words in that phrase, and it's amazing to me that you can understand every one of them kind of saying the same thing. So let's look at the word steadfast. What does steadfast mean? It means unchanging, immovable, reliable. What does the word endures mean? It means persisting, not giving up, not going away. What does forever mean? It means unending, beyond time, beyond what we can imagine, infinite. So those three words all carry this meaning of unchangingness, And what is it that is unchanging? God's love. The word God, in and of itself, connotes one who is infinite, one who is above and around and over and through all, beyond our ability to imagine. And the word love. Love never ends. That is Paul's affirmation in 1 Corinthians 13. God's love never ends. Everything else will pass away. Love never ends. And so this whole phrase, God's steadfast love endures forever. The whole phrase, every word within the phrase is emphasizing the unchanging, unending, immovable nature of God's love with us. Now, the psalmist is saying this over and over. Does that mean that the psalmist is always feeling that love? No. This phrase appears in numerous psalms, and it is often, I believe, a phrase that the psalmist is using to boost their own spirit. Because sometimes we are discouraged, sometimes we are in despair, sometimes we don't feel God's love at all. But to remind ourselves with this repeated mantra, God's steadfast love endures forever, is to build on that rock that cannot be changed through the fluctuations of what life brings and the feelings that come and go, that ebb and flow. Even in this psalm, if you continue on reading, you read about some distress that came upon the psalmist who called upon the Lord. And this phrase is celebrating that God was there to respond to the psalmist's need. It doesn't mean that it happened quickly. The psalmist describes being pushed so hard that I was falling, he says. Sometimes it feels like we get pushed to the brink. But at the bedrock of our faith is this affirmation: God's steadfast love endures forever. I pray that as you are going through the ups and downs, the challenges and heartaches and struggles and joys of your life this day, this week, that you might imprint on your heart these words: Give thanks to the Lord, for God is good, for God's steadfast love endures forever. Thanks be to God.